spécifiques selon les ressources naturelles de chaque pays.
To create wealth through work and increase our GDPs through the training of the new technologies, scientific researches, artificial intelligence, and the conservation of the protection of our environment. So
OK, vas-y.
This will be mainly based on new science and technical pathways specific to each country's natural resources to create multiple research centers and have several training workshops to learn local transformation. Restructuring our scientific capabilities will thus foster researchers and innovation.
Créer plusieurs centres de recherche. Oui, je rajoute, Nico.
Excuse me, Madame Jose, in a minute or two, you can wrap up. Due to your translation, we'll give you an extra minute to wrap up, please. Thank you.
Okay. Nico?
Oui, continue.
Que je continue, OK, merci. Okay. Donc, il faut créer plusieurs centres de recherche, avoir plusieurs ateliers de formation pour apprendre la transformation locale. La restructuration de nos capacités scientifiques favorisera ainsi la recherche et l'innovation. L'urgence réside dans l'augmentation de notre productivité agricole et le développement de la culture des services. Ces nouvelles compétences exigent que l'Afrique prépare sa jeunesse à une bonne maîtrise des outils et connaissances du numérique.
All the training centers and research centers will have the main goal will be to increase our agricultural productivity and developing the cultivation of the service. The new skills require Africa
School Head Teachers Association. My brother, you presented so well, but there is a question that is very key, which says, how ready are teachers, for example, principals, school principals, university chancellors, ministers of education, for example, how are they ready, even the heads of state, how are they ready to actually adopt tomorrow and innovative leadership in our education institutions, in our ministries of education, so that we have new ways of learning, new ways of assessing the performance of our learners, not based on just cramming and reproducing the same content, but probably by producing products on the market. So how are we ready? Because without leadership, we are simply talking about it. So how are we ready to actually adopt and probably integrate moral and innovative leadership for new educational outcomes? You have 1 minute, brother. Yes,
Readiness,
Mr. Yes.
Yes, thank you. When we are talking on readiness, it means that we must have people in place that are thinking out of the box. And 3 things are key here. There must be serious thinking on safety, serious thinking on support mechanisms to be given to the citizens, and the health of the citizens. And therefore, as we create a curriculum, the curriculum that we put in place must allow innovativeness, must provide opportunities for leaders, must allow that there are opportunities in which the learners can be able to innovate and be provided with the support to do that. So the leaders that we get, whether nationally, education level, teachers, principals of schools, must be able to adapt, as I said earlier, on multiple options that allow students to learn and be able to collaborate with others within the school and outside the school. The leaders must also be able to make their countries or their institutions a hub for community learning, so that schools are not just seen as schools that produce only rote memory, but schools that are providing opportunities for the community to develop itself. I think that's what I would want to respond to.
Yes, thank you very much. And you have exhausted everything in the 2 minutes. I thank you, and you really elaborated it so well. I really expect the heads of state and all the teachers and the educational managers to do exactly that. And I thank you, brother. The other question that I have summarized for Dr. Kedres from Uganda, from the Republic of Uganda, is based on your experience as the director and the champion of education standards in the whole country. How are you prepared to integrate character, creativity, leadership development in the school standards framework? Probably by maybe, I'm talking about standards now, because the standards we currently have are basically theoretical, but we are looking at character, creativity, and leadership, even to be part of for example, a report card of a student. So how are you ready, and how are you going to do it in the situation we are in of the pandemic? How are we going forward to integrate these new concepts?
Thank you, Milton. First of all, as I mentioned at the beginning, the main basis of learning in schools is based on a curriculum, and our Ugandan curriculum is continually undergoing a review so that these competencies are part and parcel of what children learn. These competencies have both the value bit but also the technical and the theoretical. So the knowledge and the values are picked on there. In terms of standards, yes, the standards that we have focus on the teaching learning process. They focus on the leadership and management, and they also focus on the environment, the wellness of the learner and the teacher. And so all these things are being looked at, especially against now COVID-19, to see how to adjust them to be emergency ready, but also to be continuously infused into the system. If systems are not fully established, where head teachers are very clear of what to do, whom to work with, how to progress, then you cannot go very far. And those are the areas we are looking at as we work through the present situation, but also look to the future. So yes, there is a lot of hope through the curriculum review. There is a lot of recently approved teacher policy, which looks at continuous professional development being institutionalized. There is a lot of hope in the recently passed TVET policy that looks at infusing skills integrated through school before you can join any other institutions and progress. So there is a lot being done, and we hope that we shall be able to get our young people come through with ready skills, not only for work, but for life.
Thank you, Doctor. Because of the reformation, the transformation going on in Uganda, I think it would also be critical, for example, for your directorate to be an independent institution, so that it's not influenced by the politics of the country. And I think it is something that probably political leaders actually learning from other countries around the globe. That's just an addition to the heads of the politicians, policymakers. We need, I think, also to achieve what you are saying, we need the independence of such a departments, NCDC and Kenya, whatever, all those, it is very critical. Let me go to Mr. Nicholas Siwaton from Kenya Standard Media Group. Of course, we have learned from what you presented, but we have an issue here. We understand today, Ministry of Education alone cannot transform education. We need the partnership of the private sector, the faith, interfaith institutions, parents. You know, the parents have always said, go to our children are in school. So they have been isolated to understand that they are also teachers in the circumstance. How is what is your advice to the private sector to come in at this particular time and going forward to become a critical partner in the process of transforming education outcomes? For example, schools they have the teachers who have never been engineers and doctors practically. So the private sector right now is the leading agency or framework for our economic transformation of our nations, and more of employment is from that side, and so they must influence the type of education. So how are we ready to see the private sector coming in to actually help us transform education by integrating schools with the private sector? Please help us to understand how to do it.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for that question. And I think the question is very relevant for the youth, because as you are studying at university or college, it's theoretical, yeah? And even if you invite mentors to come and talk to you in college, you do not see the actual practical implementation of what you are learning. And so what organizations do, and that's what we do as Standard Media a lot, is we provide internships. First, we provide job shadowing. So even secondary school students who would like to understand what it means to be an anchor, what it means to do a certain job, you can come and job shadow a manager and see, observe, what does this person do from morning to evening? Secondly, attachments is very important for private sector to provide opportunities for attachment for students who are still studying in campus or colleges, so that they can start understanding what does this job entail. Most of our universities right now, we take straight from O level, you go and do a degree, for example, in human resource, and possibly that is not that was not your passion. So it takes time for you to understand, do you really love that type of work? So for you to observe someone who is doing that job, you will then be able to say you actually like that job. So my prayer is that private sector, and the private sector doesn't mean even large organizations. It could even be the large supermarket in your shopping center. You could go and give a chance to a student to do simple things at the wholesale to be able to understand what it takes to really achieve something at work. So for me, I would appeal to the private sector to offer much more opportunities for internship for students, those who have completed and those who are also still studying, during their off-campus period. That would be my comment on that.
Thank you so much, my brother Nicholas. And now it's based on what you have said. So we have also to expect some free internet, donations of internet into schools, into all that, so that schools produce the type of quality employees for the private sector. Lastly, I'm going to Her Excellency, the public around Africa, the people of Africa are actually asking, what is your advice to governments, the governments of Africa, in terms of transforming education, which also requires some sort of reformation of policy framework? What is your advice that to governments in Africa, especially those that are still basing the education on the colonial framework, where reformation has never happened at all? We producing job seekers, not job creators, innovators. You know, right now we see DRC, the country you come from, is the richest country in the whole world with mineral resources. But the recent report from World Bank also indicate that is the second poorest nation in the world. So it is education that must change such a kind of trajectory from conflict zone to peaceful community, from poverty to prosperity, just like all African countries face the same challenge. But then to achieve that, a transformation of education must be at the center. What type of policy should we really adopt at political point of view? Yes, Your Excellency. Hello, Your Excellency, you are there? Okay. I think the translator must be translating what I've said in French. But Nicholas, if you are still there, you can help in to guide the African heads of state and who are still in the same spectrum of maintaining a colonial education system. What is your advice to these heads of state? Because without them, definitely will not even move, even at budget level. So what is your say? Just in half a minute.
Marie-Josée, c'est juste pour voir quel est le conseil ou bien l'avis de ce qu'on pourrait demander au gouvernement, parce que tous ces changements impliquent quand même l'engagement des États et surtout des dirigeants. Qu'est-ce que vous pensez que vous pouvez recommander? Parce qu'on a besoin de l'implication du décideur également, et c'est le cas pour la plupart des pays africains.
Non, justement, c'est que, bon, comme j'ai expliqué tout à l'heure déjà, que le fait de pouvoir améliorer l'éducation à nos populations, cela est une valeur ajoutée pour nos populations. Donc, le conseil que je pourrais donner à nos gouvernements, c'est d'abord d'augmenter le budget de la scolarité et faire de la scolarité une priorité. Faire de la scolarité une priorité en augmentant justement le budget de ce programme-là et prendre justement le temps à travers le ministère de la Recherche scientifique pour pouvoir créer des filières scolaires qui tiennent compte de nos richesses naturelles. nous n'avons pas d'école forestière, nous n'avons pas d'école d'agriculture, nous n'avons pas d'école qui enseigne, comment dire, le pétrole. Tout à l'heure, j'en ai parlé déjà de la nouvelle technologie. Ce sont des programmes que nous devons ajouter à nos programmes pour pouvoir aider les jeunes à entrer rapidement dans le marché du travail. Donc, c'est un peu ça que je pourrais dire.
Okay, in nutshell, she just mentioned that on the leader side, we need to make sure that they understand the urgency to increase the budget for education. This is a key element, because we cannot understand, with all the resources we have in Africa, we should have centers, we should have research centers where our children are learning about our potential, our minerals, everything we have on the ground. To learn all the transformation, we need a government to understand the urgency to fund those programs. This is how we're going to increase our GDPs as well.
Okay, thank you. I think we had not completed with the other speakers. At this point, let me come in and request Madam Theo Kasanga to make maybe a probably shorter presentation. We are sorry.
Thank you very much. Allow me to just very quickly just highlight perhaps what we in the private sector in Kenya have had to think about education future readiness, especially now in the time of Corona. For us, it's been a wake-up call. Education in Kenya is provided by two providers, the public and the private. The private in itself has the high cost and the low cost space, which is huge, providing about a third of the education in Kenya. We were on target to provide education, future education ready students because of the new curriculum that Kenya is rolling out. And anyways, having smaller classes, the advantages of being in a private sector, we were better placed to do a lot of things. But this pandemic has just equalized everyone and blown open some of the things that we thought we were doing right. And now we are sure, we know that we all have to now come together to ensure that the country moves at a singular pace. For students to be ready in the workforce right now, we understand that technology is key. This Mr. Indimuli has also talked about technology. How do we make sure that that technology is available? For us in the private sector, we don't get government funding for anything. So we have to think for out-of-the-box solutions for some of these issues. And providing the same quality of education for the low-cost space is as challenging as what the government policymakers are going through. And for us in the private sector now, partnerships with other private sectors is the most important thing to ensure that devices, first and foremost, are made available affordably for even the home that lives just above the poverty line. For us in Kenya, yes, we do have people who live just above the poverty line who put their children in private education. We do have a lot of private education providers who cater for the kids completely below the poverty line. So whatever solutions that can be sought need to cater for that. One of the speakers mentioned internet connectivity as one of the biggest hindrances to technology as we prepare future-ready students, citizens of this country. And this is where now the partnerships, private partnerships will come into play. Already in Kenya, we have seen major partnership deals in this time of the pandemic to make sure that connectivity is reduced and ring-fenced for students. It's already working, and we have seen that university students in the private sector and now in the public sector have managed to resume their education despite the pandemic online. We are hoping that these gains will not be clawed back as we reopen the education sector. We are now worrying about our TVET sector, which traditionally has been left out of a lot of policy planning, as one of the speakers has mentioned from Uganda. The Kenyans, we are facing the same problems. We are transforming our curriculum. We are going into the competency education and training, but we have not factored in technology and the fact that we are training these young people to go out into a world that is very, very different from what the curriculum planners are envisioning. The linkage between the private sector in informing curriculum development at the TVET space becomes the most important thing right now. And we are slowly making gains in Kenya, where the private sector, the engineers boards, the factories, the SMEs are now having a space to articulate the kind of worker they want out of the TVET section in education. In basic education, this is where the challenge, the biggest challenge lies. And this is where we set the bedrock for the kind of student who goes into tertiary training. The various surveys have given us an indication of the kind of future ready, the skills that industry needs us in curriculum to put in. Leadership comes in at the top, ability to work in teams, communication skills, problem solving, work ethic, initiative, analytical and quantitative skills. Computer skills come in at a very high point. Knowledge, that is the technical skills, come in very high. So we have to turn around and fast track the turning around of our education system to move away from what we traditionally have had, which is the cramming, just wholly knowledge centered, to a diverse curriculum that focuses on creativity, strategic planning, organizational ability, all these skills that the workspace requires an education system to have. With the CBC curriculum in Kenya, this is what is happening right now. We are starting right from the most elementary level, kindergarten, nursery schools, and changing the curriculum to be more leaning more towards competencies, infusing IT into the curriculum. While this has not helped us during this pandemic because the schools have the devices, the families don't. We have seen a total breakdown of education during this pandemic. And for us in the private sector, we are partnering with other private sector players to ensure that from January, we begin a massive rollout of devices at the low cost of about $25 per school term, which is every 4 months.
Madam Kasanga,
so, actually, I can finish there. So thank you very much. That this is the pandemic for us is we are looking at it as an opportunity to leapfrog into the 21st century, and we hope we can carry the rest of the country with us as we work out the best ways to do these things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Theo and Mr. Siwatom from the private sector. The COVID pandemic has really had a huge impact on the private schools, the private institutions. And so that is quite a big take and challenge for you. You brought in very interesting aspects of partnerships and linkages with all the other agencies in order to do what we are talking about, that is instill the creativity, the character building, and the skills which are required for the 21st century. Thank you very much for that insight. We will still have one more speaker. Mr. Magaji, please, Michael. You're welcome to give a short presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I'm delighted to be here to talk about character, creativity, and skills for future-ready education. I'm speaking from Nigeria, and I'm sure many of you are aware of the challenges we also have here in education, especially at the basic level, where over 30 million kids don't have regular access to schooling, especially at the formative years, which is a big challenge. Luckily, COVID has brought out some good sides, which is to put pressure on government and other stakeholders to accelerate the process of being able to digitize, and through digitization, transform the educational space. We must be able to democratize technology. Let as many people have it. And I think what a lot of agencies are doing in government and out of government in Nigeria is to develop an inclusive strategy. And how do you do that? You develop an inclusive strategy because we know government cannot do it alone. I hear a lot about government, this government, that. It's a primary responsibility of government to deliver education to all children across the globe. However, many governments are constrained by resources and then that imbalance with priorities. So education suffers from some of these at times. But however, with stakeholder engagement, more stakeholder engagement, and I'm happy to hear that people are looking at the private sector, non-state actors, I sit on an alumni of associations called the Unity School Old Students Association. I serve there, and it's an alumni, the largest alumni of secondary schools in Nigeria. Over 104 schools of common parentage, established over 40, 50 years ago. And as stakeholders, we as alumni have come together to raise funding to promote education. We are promoting infrastructure. We are promoting ICT. We are developing mentoring methodologies. We are providing the ability for internships for people in our old schools to come and also work and share and prepare them for the world of tomorrow. That is very critical. Very importantly, too, most recently, we are putting together what we call a USOSA virtual school. This is a school that people can go online in those 104 schools and in other schools across Nigeria and indeed the continent to access traditional content. Not only traditional content in terms of what is offered in primary and secondary schools, but even non-traditional content like things like local languages and our culture, where people can learn. Nigerians can learn, Africans can learn our language, they can learn our culture. Foreigners outside the continent can also learn. So the USOSA virtual school is one result of what the alumni, and I want to urge all of us to also activate alumni in our various countries to support and complement government in a collaborative fashion. And that also we think is something that will work very well. We also have another stakeholder, a key stakeholder, which I also serve, that is doing digital transformation and education in Nigeria. It's called the Pro Futuro Project, where we're working with donors, international donors, Pro Futuro in Spain, with the northern state governments in Nigeria. We're doing 12 northern states, the most difficult and underprivileged areas. We're giving them access to tools and also content. And this content is not just, like I mentioned earlier on, we're not just interested in using content. We want to co-create content. Africa must create its own content too, not just swallow hook, line, and sinker. So we must localize content. We must also originate it and then collaborate with the rest of the world and transform digitally into the global education space. So with Pro Futuro, we've reached out to thousands of teachers and students in over 116 schools in Nigeria. And again, key stakeholder engagement. And I want to urge us to keep doing key stakeholder engagement. Another thing that will shape the future of Africans in the global working space is collaboration with people like the telecom operators. In Nigeria, we also have a situation where some telecom operators are already offering subsidized data plans for our students. Where
Thank you, Mr. Magaji. We lost you a bit there. You're muted. Joseph, if you could unmute, please. Yes. Mr. Magaji is muted. Okay, moderator. Hello?
Yes, please.
we think that is also, are you there?
We've lost him. Oh, he's back.
Okay.
Oh, you are back, yes.
Mr. Magaji, just make the concluding sentence and then the moderator will come in.
Yes, fine. So we believe that this can only happen when we create the digital natives for tomorrow's workplace. And once we give them that teaching and learning experience, they will do very well. And most importantly, for the teachers, those who are conveying, who are guiding, we need to upskill them right from the formative years of their training in colleges of education. And I think together, that experience, both in teaching and learning, will improve across Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, giving us that perspective from Nigeria and running through common threads, which other panelists have brought up, the connectivity, the issue of the ICT, the internship. Thank you very much for reinforcing the other ideas. Mr. Kambula, we need now to go to the question and answer session. Okay, he's off.
No, I am on. So you, the question, I think you can also handle that. Fire some of the questions.
Okay.
That you have on your side.
Yes, please.
Based on, yes, fire some questions. Yes, please.
Could we first have another poll, just briefly before we wind up on the discussions? Joseph, yes, please. Another poll is coming up quickly. Just to review what we have heard from our panelists. Joseph? Okay, let me fire away a question as we wait for the poll to come. There is one angle that has not been touched, in my view, from the questions that were submitted at registration. I would like to ask Mr. Siwatom and Madam Muteo to address this. The issue of radicalization. The fear, I think, by our participants that what can we do in our institutions or as professionals and all the stakeholders to prevent the radicalization of children in schools because of the other environment that surrounds us that prompts them to go into or to be radicalized. So quite a number of participants asked that question, please. The private sector, you control very many schools. In Kenya, maybe you've had that bad experience of terrorism, Nigeria the same, and other countries. Could we hear briefly about that?
In the private sector, one of the things we have done is bring together all the faith-based institutions under one umbrella so that we can begin to understand the influence of poverty and how we as education institutions can shape some of the religious discourse that seems to drive extremism. This has been largely successful, and we've seen the integration of Christian ethos, Muslim ethos, and all the other faith ethos in schools quite successfully, and therefore they are being used to build up the value, some of the value systems that as Kenyans we espouse. The government sector is also doing the same, bringing all the religious players together so that we can come out with a concerted effort to understand and then and work out the best ways to mitigate against extremism in schools. Okay, I think that's the about it. Yes.
Thank you. I think Mr. Siwatom that shares probably your views for the Kenya experience.
Yes, I do share what Madam Kazanga has commented, but in terms of radicalization, what we also need to ensure is we have family support, because most of the children who get radicalized is because of the challenges they face at home in terms of do they have 3 meals, identification of these families that can easily lose their children to radicalization is very important, because poverty is a major factor into this.
Thank you. If we could, I could still request for the panelists to address 2 more issues. One is the area of corruption, leadership, poor example, which some of the participants have raised. Mr. Indimuli Kahi and well, we had expected the Reverend here is not here. Maybe we could have Madam Maria Jose as one of the politicians, the political leaders, address this issue on in this session, the issue of corruption. And then I'll bring the issue of ICT vis-a-vis the rural areas, the accessibility of the majority of our learners. That will be addressed by Madam Turiajan. So corruption, leadership, one participant even asked about the leadership styles of some head teachers that that does not inspire them or hinders, is a hindrance rather than a mentorship of the young people. Please. You're muted, Mr. Indimoli. You're muted. Unmute.
Thank you.
Okay.
Challenges of corruption are actually there, and there is need for the education systems to seriously address this. I was listening to the Standard Group presenter, and he was talking of when a child sees another one getting a job in a very unfair means, then it becomes a big challenge. We must, in leadership, be able to demonstrate values and live with them that inspire the young children. When these three things are not safeguarded, that is the safety of the child, the engagement of the people, and the children feeling supported, they will definitely look for means of getting what they want, and that would be through corruption. So education systems must always ensure that safety, engagement, support, and challenging tasks to the children are given to them. This will keep them involved. The parents will be involved, and therefore the children are also protected from home. Issues of radicalizations will not appear. And once the education systems ensures that the child going through this system acquires competences that are value-based, competences that give direction, then we will slowly see challenges of corruption getting out of our system. Of course, leadership plays a very big role in our schools. As principals, the head teachers, students look up to us.
Thank you, Mr. Kahi. Thank you very much. We are left with just less than 5 minutes to end our session.
Thank you.
Let us leave it at that. I think at this point, the moderator will make a closing remark, and then I run up another poll before we close.
Thank you, my brother, for actually helping. You have really helped Mr. Okech to actually also help engage the panelists. But before we conclude this session, is that I have really been reading the questions that are coming from every part of Africa, and also vis-a-vis the other questions coming from Asia, Europe, USA. But you realize that everyone from Africa seems to be asking the same question. When will Africa when will Africa develop new educational models that will help Africa become peaceful and transformed? That is the summary of the thousands of questions coming from every part of Africa. And now the panelists have really helped us to navigate into answering this question, which is the summary of the many that have been reading on the screen. If we can, each one of us, take some time and feel the pain Africa has gone through all these hundreds of years, and I can believe the young people are not waiting for any other day of seeing the transformation of Africa, but now. So, Mr. Richard, I request you that within our closing session and this particular moment, each one of us should accept that the conference of today has requested all schools to integrate character, creativity, leadership development, entrepreneurship, and innovations to be part of the classroom, to be part of the educational policy framework, to be part of parenting, so that homes turn from being homes, but educational faculties also, the religious institution, the private sector, so that holistically, each one of us is a teacher. And this time, as we conclude from the answers from other experts who have been also contributing to the conversation, they are saying that each one of us should become a moral and innovative leader, but also an educator. So I congratulate everyone. Mr. Richard, I know you have 10 years experience in implementing this model, and within our mandate, I think we are continuing to serve, but I thank everyone and congratulate each speaker, each panelist to take the recommendations that we have learned from each other in your respective countries. I take the honor to also thank Joseph, Mr. Joseph, who is our the expert on technology. Mr. Joseph, can you show your face? You are hidden somewhere. People need to see the person behind the hosting. the expert at headquarters in the United States. I thank Mr. Kaga. Kaga, please, you will show your face. Mr. Daniel Kayemba, Anosmas, the whole team there. Yes, yes, brother. So I conclude my closing remarks.
Thank you. Joseph, please run us the closing poll. If we could just answer that in about 5 seconds. Thank you very much. This is giving us an indication that this being a character creativity aspect, the value-based discussion, it has really inspired us and given us the challenge, like the closing remarks of Kambula Milton, for us to be the role models in this and then implement all the other recommendations. Thank you very much, all the panelists. We really value your time and your presentations. You've taken time to put together something that will benefit the entire globe. Thank you all the participants. Thank you, Joseph. Would like to end this session here. That will benefit the entire globe.